Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We're back again here with Chapter 24 of Trip Across the Pond, Personal Vietnam Experience. Author Thomas K. DuGan, that's me, and the publishing company Bentworth Press. And again, you see the front cover here, designed and created by me. To get on now with this, we'll go this chapter, Put the Coffee on Bubbles, I'm Coming Home. 2 days had passed and Delta Company was out on another operation by themselves. It seemed that operations were being broken down to company size instead of battalion size. Stopping at battalion headquarters, I learned that my orders had come down. I had been promoted to E5. There was not much to do at base camp other than pull guard duty, and somehow I managed to avoid that. 4 more days in Vietnam would be history to me. However, I was always concerned for my company and Captain Culbreth. My job would never really stop until the day I left. There were not too many places to go around the base camp, so sometimes I would drive my Jeep out to the maintenance area of the rubber plantation. The radio in my Jeep would be turned to the frequency that Delta Company would be on, so I could be aware as to how they were faring. It was interesting observing the Vietnamese people working at the maintenance area. They were always so clean, and the French-made trucks were always spotless. I thought they were the weirdest looking trucks, though I liked them. 2 days left to go, and I was sitting in my Jeep listening to the radio when Captain Culbreth came on the horn. He was speaking with a field major back at battalion headquarters. Captain Culbreth had 4 men down with malaria. He was asking the field major if a medical jeep could be sent by way of an ox cart trail that led from base camp to where Delta Company would be waiting, approximately 3.5 miles away. The field major told Captain Culbreth that he would get back. A few moments later, the field major came on the horn. He reported to Captain Culbreth that a medical jeep was not permitted to go more than 1/4 mile outside the base camp. When their conversation was finished, I came on the horn. Delta 6 X-ray, over. Delta 6 X-ray, monitored conversation. I'm not too good of a judge on how far 3.5 miles is. I think I might be able to cover the distance. Delta 6, read you, Lima Charlie, out. Putting the handset back, I started my Jeep and drove outside the base camp. With my right foot pressing the accelerator pedal to the floor, I went hell-bent for horseshoes down the ox cart trail. Thoughts went through the field of the mind. 2 days left to go. The Jeep could hit mines. Buried in the ox cart trail, Charlie, the VC, anyone could have ended the drive at any time. However, I could help, and that was what I was going to do. What was life anyway, if you could not help someone? It seemed like eternity getting to wherever they were waiting. I kept looking for them, though no one was to be seen. My right foot kept the accelerator pressed to the floor. Finally, there was a glimpse of 2 or 3 soldiers standing on the right side of the ox cart trail. Driving closer, I spotted Captain Culbreth. I drove to where he stood. We acknowledged each other, and he gave me a tired grin. I know you should have not done it. Then with a sigh he went on, but I'm glad you did. Saying nothing, I gave an expression that said it was not a problem. It was the least I could do. A few soldiers literally carried the 4 soldiers with malaria to my Jeep as they were extremely weak and with fever. Wasting no time, the soldiers placed them into my Jeep. I turned my Jeep around and again drove hell-bent for horseshoes back to our base camp. The trip seemed much faster going back, and there was not a problem along the way. That seemed unbelievable to those that later learned of the adventure. They also thought I was nuts, having only a couple days left in Vietnam. I guessed there were several ways to look at it. What the hell? Was not life always a gamble? Arriving at battalion medical station, some soldiers helped me to get our soldiers with malaria inside. Having done everything possible, I left in my Jeep and drove to battalion headquarters. Going inside, I had received my orders and a pay voucher. Then I went to finance and collected some money. Back at battalion headquarters, I parked my Jeep and went over to the Web Talk, where I used to stay when driving for Battalion Major Ern Pulsifer. Walker and Mark was there, and we talked about what happened, plus going to Delta Company. Perhaps the second lieutenant would put me on burn guard. With a little more than a day to go, pulling guard duty was simply out of the question. "Thomas, let's get a beer," Walker said. "Well, okay, the only one, and no more." Walker smiled, and Mark looked down and shook his head, then muttered something like, "Here we go again." The three of us got into my Jeep and we went to the beer hall for the last time. "You're not too bad, DuGan. You're okay," Mark said, after we had consumed a few. Looking straight ahead, there came a grin that swept my face. The thoughts went through the field of the mind, reviewing the past and being outside of it. I did the best I could. After a few more drinks, who's counting? It was getting late in the evening, or was it morning? Walker, Mark, and I left the beer hall, got into my Jeep, and had my Jeep take us drunks home. The next morning, Walker, Mark, and I, plus a few other soldiers, bid each other farewell. It was the last day there for me, and I also had wished it could be the last day for them. Getting in my Jeep, I looked over at Walker. "Now take care of that watch, okay?" "You bet, Thomas." Looking straight ahead, and my Jeep drove me to Delta Company. Delta Company had come back to base camp, and it was hectic there. Everyone was running around, showering, drinking beer, writing letters, going to the PX. I spent much of the time driving people around, doing as much as I could for them, though I never got around to seeing Captain Calworth. There was a sensation like Delta Company, Camp Rainier was behind me. I was fading away, moving outside where I'd lived for a time, and I would not be back. It seemed so strange and cruel, so unexplained. I wanted to tell Captain Calworth about me making E5, though I did not, and the next morning a driver from battalion headquarters came to pick me up. The driver took my suitcase and I had purchased at the PX, my handbag, and put them into his Jeep. Hurriedly we got into his Jeep and went straight to the airstrip. The driver took my suitcase and handbag out of the Jeep and over the airplane that would be taking me away. We shook each other's hand, then the driver left. An Air Force soldier checked to see that my name was on the manifest list, then carrying the suitcase and handbag, I walked into the same type of airplane that carried me to so often before. A half hour's wait and we were up into the air. I was leaving many people that I had learned to love and were very much a part of me. In the half-an-hour flight to Long Binh, when thinking about everyone, I had a difficult time keeping the tears from filling my eyes. Of course, I was filled with excitement. I was going home. Although regardless of how anyone looked at it, Vietnam had been my home for a year. In that year, I lost much reality of what the United States, my real home, had been like. Those soldiers back there at Camp Rainier and the soldiers in all of Vietnam, I also wanted to be going home. Seemed like only minutes had passed and we landed at the airstrip in Bien Hoa. A group of us were transported to Long Binh, an area set up superficially for soldiers leaving Vietnam. I was assigned to a barracks and given information that I would be leaving December 8th, 2 days later. Arriving at the barracks, the first person I met was Sergeant Terrell. He filled me in on a few things, telling me about Sergeant Major Graham and him going to the 1st Field Forces. Sergeant Terrell told me that Sergeant Major Graham tried hard to get in touch with me to get me for his driver. Later that day, everyone was called to an area where duties were handed out. Fortunately, being an E5, I did not have to do any duties. I definitely liked that idea. When arriving back at the barracks, someone tapped me on the shoulder, and when I turned around to see who it was, "Mike, you sons of a bitch! How are you, guy? How have you been?" "I'm okay, Tom. How's about yourself? You're looking good." "Okay, Mike," I reported as I grabbed his hand and shook it like there was no tomorrow. "Okay, Mike. Okay. Damn. It's good to see you, Mike. I'm glad you're in one piece." We stood there telling each other about our many experiences, bringing ourselves up to date. When thinking about it, hell, we had traveled to Fort Ord, to Fort Riley, on the troop train, aboard the ship USS Patch, Camp Bearcat, Saigon, and now we were ready to go home, though Mike was leaving a day earlier than me. That did not seem right. However, that was the way it was, and there was little we could do about it. We had some things to do, and I would see Mike the next day before he left. I looked everywhere for Robert Kelly, though was unsuccessful in locating him. However, I thought that he may have already left. The next day, Mike and Sergeant Troyell were leaving. We gave each other a brother's hug, then bid each other farewell. "See you in California, matey," I yelled after Mike as he was boarding the airplane. Walking back to the barracks, I thought of Mother and Father, about an ending I had once put on a letter to Mother. "Put on the coffee, Bubbles. I'm coming home." Well, tomorrow I would be leaving for the United States and arrive the same day, I thought. Little did I know what was in store for me on the long way back home. November 15th, 1967, Wednesday. Dear Mom, got a letter from you yesterday, so I'll write on out in return. Up in the 80s for now, and pretty darn nice with that. It doesn't get cold or too cold in December. The bamboo poison is taken care of, and the jungle rot is healing pretty good. Did I ever tell you while walking through the swamps one day that I got a leech on my nose? Isn't that something? Everybody laughed. That card I sent to Uncle Don on top of a sea ration box. I'll come home on a plane about 16 hours of flight. Only 26 days left. Not long now. I should get 30-day leave. I'm sending my movie projector and a couple of boxes with items of interest, of course. I kind of carry my guitar, which is in terrible shape, but has sentimental value. No, the war is worse in one way, better in another. We're killing more gooks than ever. There is more fighting. Charlie has got more people, and he is attacking everywhere in regiments. The Air Force is having a field day. The war is stepping up, and North Vietnam is hurting but getting aid from Russia. But if Russia gets too damn smart, we will box our ears good. We've been over here almost 8 years with one hand tied behind our back, and we're getting tired. But not to retreat, but to loosen the other hand and knock these gooks silly. What would be fine to get Jack, Mike, and Bud together in a night that would be fine. Until then, we'll see you soon. P.S. 26 days. Not home yet, though. Love, Tom. We have a copy of an envelope here with the Vietnam on it that was written, and this was the 16th of November 1967. It concludes that chapter. The next chapter we will be looking at will be 55,000 gallons of kerosene and one less engine. Chapter 25. You're going to want to be able to listen to this, and I know you're going to enjoy it. Thanks again, folks, and we'll see you.